Dana White is without question the most powerful man in mixed martial arts today. As the president of the UFC and among the primary minds behind its great success, Dana's mastery of both fight promotion and media control has made him one of the sharpest public figures in combat sports history. That said, like every powerful and well-connected figure, there are certain things that White would rather we didn't know about him and some of his most popular stars. This is 10 Secrets Dana White Doesn't Want UFC Fans to Know. Number 10. Mike Perry. To kick things off, we're going to take a look at one of the most controversial fighters in the sport today, the hard-nosed welterweight veteran Mike Perry. Now, Perry's volatility is by no means a secret to the world, as most fans will likely be aware of at least one of his rather crazy moments from the last few years. What Dana has failed to address, however, is the sheer number of unforgivably bad moments from Platinum that have gone unpunished from the UFC. To this day, despite public altercations, controversial comments, and some downright worrying behavior, the UFC have shown no signs of parting ways with this show-stopping 170-pound talent. Indeed, Perry is an exciting fighter, but in the past, we've seen Dana bring the axe down for far less than the sum of Mike Perry's misdemeanors. Number 9. Yoel Romero. Yoel Romero, to put it simply, had a rather interesting route to the top of the UFC's middleweight division. Now, fighting under the Bellator banner, Romero's shadier moments do put something of a downer on his better ones, whether it was his blatant fence-grabbing against Jakar, his infamous time spent on the stool against Tim Kennedy, or his corner's decision to douse him in water during a break in the action against Chris Weidman. Yoel's original ascent to the upper echelons of the 185-pound weight class was littered with moments such as these, and when you have one of the sport's most popular fan favorites regularly fighting for the title, it's pretty safe to assume that Dana would rather that we conveniently forget just what it took for this former Olympic wrestler to reach the level he eventually did. Number 8. Khabib Nurmagomedov. Khabib Nurmagomedov's growth into one of the biggest global superstars in MMA likely came as a serious surprise to most, given his relatively humble demeanor. And though he eventually became a more outspoken and compelling character, the now infamous moment showed us the usually stoic Nurmagomedov in darker light. The viral video, which immediately circulated through both sports and mainstream news, shows Khabib and some of his friends paying a homeless man to do push-ups, laughing at him as he struggles his way through the required amount. All in all, the public backlash to this video was overwhelmingly negative, with many pointing to the clip as proof of the fact that Khabib isn't as good-hearted as he might appear. In the end, it didn't do much to dispel the aura that surrounds the former UFC lightweight champion, but even with his retirement now in mind, you can bet that Dana would prefer that this never happened. Number 7. Conor McGregor. It was only a matter of time before Conor McGregor's name would make an appearance on this list. As perhaps the most divisive figure in the history of mixed martial arts, Conor has always been a magnet for controversy. And when you stop to think about it, it's easy to imagine that Dana White has more than a few secrets about this brash Irishman in his vaults. But even with his more highly publicized moments that have been etched into the sport's collective consciousness, there are certainly a number of controversies that didn't originally pick up steam. One major example came in 2017, when Conor attended a UFC event in support of his longtime friend and training partner Artem Lobov, as he lost out by way of decision to the veteran Andre Fili. Upon meeting the Russian Hammer backstage, Conor comforted his gym mate by using a homophobic slur to describe his victorious opponent. In a time where such comments can spell the end of a celebrity's career, Dana White was no doubt happy to see that it largely slipped out of memory as time went on. Number 6. Matt Riddle. Though now a big success as a pro wrestler under the WWE banner, the manner in which Matt Riddle was forced out of the UFC was something that both parties are still likely feeling quite angry about. Once an interesting prospect as a mixed martial artist, Riddle's time in the UFC was pretty successful, by all accounts. However, despite his clear talent, constant run-ins with anti-doping agencies over his marijuana usage caused 2 of Matt's UFC victories to be overturned to no contests. After being axed by Dana despite being on a 4-fight win streak, the relationship between the two instantly turned quite sour. Riddle, even to this day, is quite critical of White's leadership of the UFC, and though he has in many ways found even greater success within the WWE, he still has every right to feel cheated out of a run in the top flight of MMA. For Dana, any mention of the name Matt Riddle will likely earn you an angry response, even to this day. Number 5. Mike Goldberg. The departure of Mike Goldberg from the UFC back in 2017 came as something of a shock to the fans, who were surprised by the relatively sudden announcement that one half of the sport's most iconic commentary duo would be leaving. However, what was truly controversial and in many ways cold about Goldberg's exit was that the UFC did absolutely nothing to commemorate his 20 years of service to the promotion. There was no tribute broadcast. Dana barely said anything of note, and unless you listened to Joe Rogan's podcast, you'd hardly hear anything about the parting of ways as a whole. Apparently, the new owners of the UFC, WME-IMG, simply wanted something different from their commentary team.
You know, the UFC was sold to WME. They have their own thoughts on what they want to do.
Which is, of course, fair, but the fact that no proper tribute was paid was something of a disgrace, all things considered. Number 4. Tito Ortiz. Most people know that Dana White and Tito Ortiz do not get along, and while some might assume that their sour relationship came as a result of Ortiz's growing popularity in the early 2000s and the power struggle that may have arose between the two, the actual truth is far more interesting. Dana actually served as Tito's original boxing coach and manager, guiding him through the earliest days of his road towards his eventual position as UFC light heavyweight champion. Eventually, the relationship between the two took a turn for the ugly, and one of the longest-lasting feuds in the history of mixed martial arts was born. Even to this day, Dana will take every opportunity he can to take a shot at Ortiz, once going as far to challenge Tito to an exhibition boxing matchup.
You guys have had a running feud for a long time. Have you ever fought that guy?
No, we were gonna fight one time in a boxing match.
Number 3. Donald Cerrone. Few fighters are as widely beloved as the longtime Octagon veteran Donald "Cowboy" Cerrone. As a living embodiment of the fight anyone, anytime, anyplace mentality, to say that Cerrone is a company man would be the understatement of the century. However, even with his great reputation in mind, several accusations of racism, homophobia, and sexual harassment have dogged the career of Cerrone over the last few years. And while his comments about Melvin Gillard have once again found their way into circulation within the MMA community, there have been more than enough reasons to be suspicious of Donald's character, all things considered.
If you start trading, I think he's ready to take it down.
Yeah, I'll definitely be shaking if I can get here and take you down.
Number 2. Conor McGregor. We all know that Conor McGregor had something of a major fall from grace between the years of 2017 and 2019. During this time, the Irishman couldn't keep his name out of the MMA and mainstream headlines, and while Dana likely accepted this decline for what it was, there's no doubt in our minds that he obviously hated McGregor's cameo appearance at a Bellator event in Dublin back in 2017. Conor, in celebrating his teammate Charlie Ward's knockout of John Redmond, scaled the side of the cage before the referee, Mark Goddard, had officially declared the bout over, causing a major ruckus and, well and truly, stealing the show. For Dana, having such attention brought to Bellator, their biggest promotional rivals, likely left him fuming more than any other single controversy involving his biggest asset. And try as the Bellator president Scott Coker did to condemn the incident as an ugly one, you could see the pure joy in his eyes as he celebrated his own one-time connection to the most magnetic man in all of combat sports. Number 1. ARIEL HELWANI. And finally, we have one of the more mean-spirited moments in Dana White's lengthy back catalog. The event was UFC 199, the final fight card before the UFC's milestone UFC 200 show. And though the event itself was famous for a myriad of reasons, most notably Michael Bisping's knockout of Luke Rockhold, it also served as the field of play for a major bombshell from the UFC brass. The plan ahead of UFC 200 was to announce that the legendary former heavyweight champion Brock Lesnar would be making his long-awaited return to the octagon on the UFC 200 main card. The problem was the veteran reporter ARIEL HELWANI caught wind of this and reported the story just prior to the pay-per-view broadcast. As you would expect, Dana White was absolutely furious, immediately ejecting HELWANI from the event and banning him from UFC shows for life. It was a move made out of anger, of course, But once the MMA community banded behind ARIEL, Dana was forced to let him back in. To this day, their relationship has never truly recovered, and HELWANI, through his move to ESPN, has gone from strength to strength. Not Dana's finest moment, by any means, and a rare case of him being forced to step down from a power struggle. And that will just about do it for this video. If you enjoyed today's list, be sure to leave a comment before subscribing to the channel, so you can stay up to date with all of our latest uploads. Thanks for watching.